Your content capital. Sean Michael Small here, joined with our usual Friday contributor. Now, Keaton will be joining us later, but I am, happy to have alongside me to start on the show this morning, Mrs. Janelle John Bates.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Hi, Sean.
So, Friday, sometimes we have to mix things up. We'll have the daily review after, but Janelle is available now, and we have two topics that we want to have that conversation about, one of which we want to dig into a little bit further and start off the show with, and that's with regards to the education system. Now, the Prime Minister's comments have gotten a bit more attention, which I think is a good thing, because regardless of what you think of the man, and maybe even how he presented the situation with regards to the education system potentially having deficiencies that could lead more young people to a life of crime. Okay, the fact of the matter is this is something that quite a few stakeholders, whether they're on the education side, the crime fighting side, or other parts of society, this is something that's been coming up. And we've reached a point where now, usually the government does not like to admit that there's issues with the system, but the Prime Minister, for all intents and purposes, he didn't necessarily go into too much detail, Janelle, but he did mention that the system has issues. People are being left behind. And off camera, you were mentioning to me something that I did not know. I was honestly oblivious to this, that, before 2000, or the year 2000 or so, the education system, the transition from primary school to secondary school was different. Yes. It was not automatic, as I assumed it was. I just never really thought about it. And that perhaps, at least for me, that changes my perspective on things. Maybe it might remind people the way how things used to be and might change their perspective on things. But it was not automatic. And it maybe gives the Prime Minister's words a bit more weight.
Yes, well, am I showing my age then? Because before 2000, there were between 8,000 and 10,000 children who wrote the SEA were not placed. It's under the Pandey administration in 2000 that we now have what is called free universal secondary education. So in 2000, a decision was made by that regime that every student who wrote the essay had to be placed in a secondary school. Of course, that was a big debate at that time. Arguments were made about, well, where putting these children? The result was 10 or 11 new schools were built in that year. Other new schools were built after that. The government at that time also chose to pay for children to go private secondary schools. So this education system that has been a problem. One of the issues as well arising out of that was the acknowledgement that some of these children who we used to call failed common entrance failed because they actually didn't make the grade. So it was a matter of number of places available, and also some of these children were not ready to enter into secondary education because they were making less than 30%, and that's still an issue today. So at that time, the government would have developed what they call model schools. I don't know if you remember the Russell Latopi School, the Excel Composite School. So they developed certain schools where the program was geared towards preparing children who may not have made the required grade to get a secondary education, instead of just basically what used to happen, which was they just didn't used to go to school.
Now, that brings me to two questions. The first of which is really and truly, how did society deal with that sort of situation? Because to some extent, it actually, that as an alternative does sound worse. If you just, no context, it's a black hole, we don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And perhaps now we've reached the point where, well, we've gotten used over the last 23 years of not having to deal with a situation where we have 8,000 kids not in the secondary school system. Perhaps society, it's a lot of informal arrangements that might have dealt with it, and society is not necessarily prepared to turn that clock back. And of course, the other thing is, what now is the reason? Why is it that it seems as though we just could never catch up to that figure, that gap that existed? It seems as though we've been making schools every year. We've been trying to catch up with renovations of existing schools, building new schools, getting more teachers. It's been 23 years, and I can't necessarily remember a time when, we were able to sit back and say, well, the education system is settled, it's stable, and we don't have to worry about certain logistical things now. It seems as though those logistical things have been ongoing, and we're still seeing the failure to get the system's capacity up there.
But was the Prime Minister's statement geared towards something logistical? I thought his statement was one that was apodictic, meaning to me it's beyond debate that there's a negative correlation between lower educational achievement, well, a negative correlation between education and crime, meaning the lower your educational attainment, the higher it is you are likely to enter into a life of crime. So to me, that many studies have shown that. Well, so I'm not sure what it is that...
He directly did reference the fact of the automatic advancement.
Right.
He was reported to have said, well, look, it's more or less along the same lines.
Yes.
Some kids are just not ready.
Yes.
And then he questioned, well, look, it doesn't seem as though the system has the ability now that you take them into secondary school and they're behind and there's no mechanisms, or at least no effective ones, that last part I'm paraphrasing, to allow them to catch up. Because he asked, well, what curriculum should you teach them at that point? Well, secondary curriculum that they're not ready for, or you go back to primary?
Well, I found that part I found was a bit clunky and a bit strange that he would say that, because the Ministry of Education actually has, and I'm quoting the exact name, revised operational plan for 26 secondary schools. The revised one now captures 2022 to 2027. And these are 26 secondary schools that have been identified to have been allocated the students who perform the least successfully, I'm trying to phrase this delicately at SEA. And there's a whole plan geared towards assisting these children, including modifying the Form 1 and Form 2 curriculum to treat with any deficiencies they would have. So those children in Form 1 and 2 are actually prepared for what is called a lower secondary proficiency examination. So they are taught subjects, maths, English, some technical subjects. So they are not really taught the subjects that I would have experienced in what we describe as a prestige school. So the plan is tailored towards them, so that at the end of Form 2, they take this exam, and they can either have this certificate and go off and enter the world of work after the age of 16, because education, you must be in school until 16, that is the law in our country. Or they are now ready to take on a more the regular, if you want to say, curriculum. And in those schools, there are other systems in place to help them, because it is recognized that poor educational achievement is a multifaceted problem. So in those schools, they have dedicated guidance counselors, they have safety officers, the security officers are on point. So there's a lot that is tailored towards these 26 schools. So I found it very strange that...
Well, because you're pointing out that we have the programs. Now, first of all, you know, in any nation, you could have programs and people could slip through cracks. A significant proportion could slip through cracks. But the fact of the matter is the results, we're not necessarily seeing the results. So I could actually see that the Prime Minister, he was speaking in the capacity of a politician who, he's not the Minister of Education, so I won't necessarily go to fault him, hey, why you don't know the X, Y, and Z. He can't know every single detail of every different subsector of the government's operations. So I could forgive him for just having a general opinion. But at the end of the day, you know, it's the system itself. I believe the president of Twitter, he has more or less said that it was about time the Prime Minister acknowledged the education system is broken. Okay, that's nice. Where are the marches? Where's the concern coming out from other stakeholders? The irony is the Prime Minister is one of the few people, I think, that has gone on the record to kind of say it in this way. In this particular way that now it makes you think we have a systemic problem yes, we have programs, but like I don't know if it's because of crime that's maybe highlighting the deficiencies. I feel as though the deficiencies have always been there. It's just that it's boiling over now.
The deficiencies have always been there, and I actually was listening to a debate, and it's a PDF, so I put it to read it to me out loud while I was driving. It was a debate in Parliament in 2000 called Education, Purpose and Philosophy. So a question was posed to the then Minister of Education, who was the Honorable, it was Kamala Prasad at the time, she was the Minister of Education at the time, asking that regime at the time, what are you all doing? What is your philosophy on education? And some of these same issues were raised about the literacy rate of certain students, placement, the strain on the system in terms of crowding, not overcrowding, and all these the same issues that we're having now was addressed. So it's been 23 years later, a different government, similar problem. And as I said, I still found it strange that the Prime Minister would say that. I know you're saying he doesn't have oversight or he may not have a insight into every ministry, but you are the leader of the cabinet. So you must have an idea, the issue of cracks or breaks or deficiencies in our education system would come to your knowledge, and your minister, you don't have to have a whole in depth, but just like I know that there's a program, surely you would know that too.
Right. I mean, it could be one of the things that the pandemic, political communication in pandemic is a very good example of how politicians would basically end up being called liars because they're trying to summarize and generalize and make things a lot easier for the wide general public to accept or to understand. So I don't know if it was a communication thing where he was just trying to, you know, boil things down to the basics because he didn't want to spend time talking about all the minutiae, or if it was a case where, you know, well, he should know, but nobody reported it to him, or he just didn't care to know. Like, I'm not looking to, or he did, like, I'm not looking to pass judgment necessarily on that. Of course, now we could examine it further based on how he further communicates on the issue, because that's more telling. You don't open the can of worms and then stay at the same level of awareness, right? You know, once it becomes a bigger issue, that when I say a bigger issue as how we treat it in the conversation.
I expect the next question, if I was in the opposition or anybody in society. So the Prime Minister has recognized there's a problem where certain children, the education system may not, according to him, be tailored towards them. Then my question will be, well, what are you doing? Because, or what is the Ministry of Education doing? And as I said, they are doing something. It's there. You can go on the Ministry of Education website.
How old are those programs?
This particular one it speaks to revised operational plan for 26 secondary schools. The one I read was actually 2022 to 2027. So this one was revised this year. So there was operational
last year.
No, but there was an operational plan before. But I think they had to revise it given what happened with COVID and other issues. So they've revised. So this is just a revised one. So these, I am assuming, revised mean that these schools, there was already operational plan, but we had to revise it because of X, Y, and Z. So now the plan that we have in place is from 2022 to 2027, but there was always a plan before.
Now, neither of us will know the actual budgetary figures and all of those details. But
budgetary
just
figures for,
well,
not Ministry of Education, you mean?
Well,
I mean, because we could get the budgetary figures.
Well, no, what I mean to say, like, you know, how the money is spent, how many schools, all of those breakdowns, right? Right. So, like, at some point, we're just not going to, we don't know, right? But
you can make a freedom of information request.
Well, but just a general question now, I guess, to me, at the very beginning, the most obvious solutions would be based on two basic thoughts. One would be, okay, it seems as though we don't have enough money, or we're not spending enough money because there's always behind on repairs and construction, and do we have enough teachers? So we could increase the budget allocation, which is already the largest budget allocation in national budget. The second basic, you know, idea that you could go down is, well, the students aren't ready, so let's not try to force square pegs into round holes. What are the alternatives that we could either look and see what we did before, right? How did society treat the students? Which, I mean, just because of the advancement might be even more complex and no longer viable. Or is there alternatives that we could, that the nation, society could accept? But it's, you see, the age of the students, I find, makes it very difficult.
Because a lot of these students, by the time some of them would have already repeated a class in primary school, some of them would have resat common entrance already. So by the time they go into Form 1, they're already 13 and 14. So by the time Form 2, a lot of them reach the age where it's mandatory, 16 by Form 2, 3 already. And then, well, they are not required to remain in school.
Right.
So that's the question. But I think when I read the revised operational plan, I think it sounded really good. But the question always is, we have a plan. How is the implementation going? Yeah. And there's never really enough information on what assessment we did of the plan, and this is the results we found. We found that more students, there was an improved literacy rate, there was we don't know what happens, what is the result of these plans, and that's my problem. I think we are a nation, we always come up with excellent plans. Everybody knows what the issue is. We have great ideas to fix the issue. We even start the implementation, but the assessing along the way.
Sustaining it.
Sustaining it, maintaining it, the assessment, adjustments. Well, I don't know, you never know. What is the result?
Folks, we're going to have to take a break. I do find this is something I wish that the teachers union would have spoken out a lot sooner on as one of the primary stakeholders, because they know better than anybody with regards to the curriculum and how that is going for their students, of which I still have significant concerns from the primary level. And in this hyper-competitive world, I am afraid of what the potential solutions, the unintended consequences might be, because just like how the middle rate waits for no man, well, the education system waits for no generation as they have to age and progress and develop. And if we take too long with their development, then they end up potentially, as the very young men with no opportunities, looking for some way out, not just necessarily the easy way out. At that point now, ethically speaking, how much blame could we really put on them if we're the ones that's failing them from the very beginning? Folks, we have to take a break so that Keaton could join the conversation. When we return, we want to get into a wider issue that stems from the Tobago recordings and the lack of communication over them, but it's not limited to Tobago. Stay tuned to Talking Points on WESN. We'll be right back.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas, and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of
of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And before we run out of time, we're going to go straight in the next segment. I have with us, joining us, Ms. Keaton Shah. Keaton,
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Janelle. I'm only so sorry that I missed the first conversation, the first discussion. Very important, but duties and responsibilities called.
Yes, folks, double duty, Keaton, this morning. But next topic. So we all know about the recordings that happened in the THA, but the main thing is the fact that we're not hearing the accused, right, for all intents and purposes, defending themselves. That, I think, rubs some people the wrong way. It's like, well, if it's not you, if you're innocent, say something. But there's a wider issue here, Janelle, and that's the fact that, look, the political class tends to go into this default of not speaking. When things go wrong, they don't speak. This current administration started off speaking a lot, and I remember watching the papers and seeing the public comments just dry up as more and more faux pas were made. Yeah. And I just, I'm wondering, like, look, have we reached a point where we need to tell these politicians, y'all can't just hide. This is not making sense.
Well, why do they hide? They hide because they know they can get away with it. They know the mindset of Trinidadians. How long are we going to remember it? So they're banking on that. The longer we stay silent, some other thing will become more topical, and we're going to forget about that. And that's how we act in Trinidad. And so they're banking on the psyche and the normal practice of Trinidadians.
Great minds think alike. Because, see how Janelle and I are related somehow, because I made that same point. I think, was it yesterday or the day before? I'm 100% in full agreement with you. Here in Trinidad, we have a couple hours memory.
We down from 9 days. It was 9, it went 7, it was a couple hours.
No, it was a couple hours. And I say a couple hours because we tend to forget as one big issue happens, maybe it survives a couple of days within the press because one, it sells, and two, you have perhaps the opposition or the current administration, depending on who's always speaking about it. But then Trinidadians move on because they get frustrated. We forget about it. Everybody gets away. However, that's not happening in Tobago because this seems to be the biggest talking point coming out of Tobago within the last week. So much so that every aspect of Tobago, including the business chamber, has now commented on this issue. Everybody has spoken about it except those who are allegedly involved.
But one interesting thing, Sean used the word accused, okay? In law, the person who is accused is not the one who has to prove anything. It's the alleger.
True, but this
so I don't know, but it's not, I know it's not a court of law. So
it's a court of public opinion.
So I don't know if they're banking on that. If you have said it's me, well, prove it. You've just let out this audio there. No, it's not a video. You say it's me.
Now, I do believe...
How am I going to defend that?
I do believe Kelvin Morris has more or less said near the beginning that he's pinned it on, Farley Augustine. However, as much as we are looking to the THA to respond, it's not as though like the pitchforks are like, it's Farley, and we have signs against him and everything. But the irony is because of that, because it's not as though the public seems to be all, just making that assumption one time and not even, entertaining innocent until proven guilty. The public is not there yet, but the silence actually makes it even harder to kind of keep that assumption at bay.
General, may I ask you, in a court of law, there's an audio recording of voices whom we cannot put faces to. Does that ever count as evidence, or is that dependent upon the case?
Well, it depends on the case. An audio can count, but normally it is supported by the evidence of somebody. You can't just drop an audio just so. Somebody has to speak to how the recording came about. If they recorded it, how they got it, how the integrity of the recording was preserved to show, because we live in an age where things can be manipulated.
That is true.
Precisely.
So it's not just, I have an audio, I say, somebody has to come and give evidence about the audio.
And there's this issue of deepfakes as well. So let's, we're being open and honest here, and we must include all factors. There's a major issue globally now of deepfakes. There is a possibility, but the thing is, in this instance, as you just said, accused, normally it's the one who is making the accusations who has to come out and say, yes, this is
Where
it.
did the audio come from?
But this is the thing.
I myself am not entirely sure.
I am not entirely sure. I know it just started circulating on social media. The exact source, I cannot confirm the exact source, but I would suspect if this is genuine, clearly the two voices that I heard would know who else is present and would have known who else exactly was there and possibly who was recording. If this by chance was the work of the PNM Tobago Council, it was brilliant in the sense that, again, including all factors, if there was a spy or a mole or something like that, it was a brilliant job. I can't say,
But I mean, okay, if he does come and, so the two choices are either him coming to say it was me or it wasn't me.
Precisely.
So if he comes and says it wasn't me, how far does that take us? Would that be convincing to the people who believe it was him? What does it change?
The irony is the timing of it, right?
What does it change if he said it wasn't him? Would you believe him?
It's harder now. I think it's made it harder now with the waiting.
He's pulling a Shaggy.
And then if he says it is me, then there's so many ramifications from that.
He's not going to come out and say it was me.
So the only option is it wasn't me.
But why wait so long to say that?
But the thing is, you're a politician. You're supposed to be versed in the craft of the gift of the gab, or at least I would think so, because you say silence is golden. I think we, just for reference in this conversation, I think we have some extremely poor excuses for ministers, but they still have the gift of the gab, which kind of helps them along the way. For me, yes, okay, even if silence is golden, in this instance, it's now muddying the waters very badly.
Silence is unacceptable in this situation. It really normally would call for someone to say something, all right? People are alleging something very serious. But I'm very practical. I'm still saying to myself, well, even if he comes and what could he possibly say that would convince those, and I'm not actually very familiar with his voice, but everybody I've spoken to seems very convinced about it one way or the other. If he said it wasn't me, how far does it take us? That is the question I've been mulling over in my mind. Does that make it more likely we'd vote for him? Would it make it less likely? Does it make the situation, would it be better or worse than now?
Right, so, and that speaks to the wider issue because, usually, I would agree with you all. Yes, I mean, just in this administration alone, it seemed as though one controversy is usually overwritten by the succeeding controversy. The irony, of course, is that more recently, it tends to be back-to-back government issues, whereas before, the government opposition might have traded off with who's going to say something foolish today, right? But we have seen situations where I think, to some extent, for the past government, their excesses did not help their re-election. Now, granted, their re-election campaign was also bad, but also the government before that, the Honorable Patrick Manning, he had to call a snap election because the calls, the cries of the commentary of, this is a dictatorship and he's doing this and this and that, and some of it coming from his own bench, it to some extent forced his hand, to some extent.
I kind of disagree, but that's a different topic. I think that was an unnecessary move, but Maybe it's just hindsight is 2020.
I think and the issue that we're discussing, though, it stems from a situation in Tobago, audio clip circulating on social media.
Well, you saw where the commentary, affected the situation.
All right, okay, but the point I'm making is that this is a general conversation. It is something that all politicians should take heed of, because I would accept that at times it is better to stay quiet rather than rush into making a statement. But the mere fact that Trinbagonians, because it's Trinidad as well, it's not just Tobagonians, have actually allowed this story to stay alive.
Commendable
right?
on our parts.
Which is
it has been in the news a little bit longer than I thought it would be.
But this is precisely why it shows that if we really cared and if we really wanted to, we can actually put up a stance.
But is it the general public, Trinidadians and Tobagonians have been speaking on? I can't say that I've necessarily seen on social media. You know, you could go on social media and see comments from the general public about an issue. I feel like it's people in certain industries speaking about it, but I'm not seeing mass conversations, posts about the topic.
One needs to ask the question on social media, in a lot of the avenues, is it the general public or is it diehards / activists? Not all of them are activists.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Sometimes when a topic is hot enough, regular people on my social media would talk about it, not people you know are activists or have a particular stand. You would just see people talking, but I don't think I'm seeing a lot of people. Have you?
To Keaton's point, you know, the fact that even just having the media and the talking heads stay on the topic, that is still a bit of an accomplishment. Except my caveat is, I do wonder, is it because we just haven't had a big enough story to kind of override it, to overtake it?
There is a big story that, and it's not a controversy, and I'm very much displeased at the fact that we have not addressed it as yet, and that is with respect to Tobago's presidency at the UN General Assembly. Which is
a very positive news point.
Last week we were speaking about positive news.
Yes.
And this is what I'm saying. So as much as, and I'm segueing a bit here, because the point is, it has stayed alive due to the talking heads of certain industries, due to media such as us. I mean, this is probably the 4th time we've brought up this topic. But it is a very important topic, and as I said, from a general perspective as well, not just for this particular clip. But I'm thinking to myself, last week I was asking Janelle about good news.
Yes.
And I think we've gotten some excellent news, the best news that we've gotten in quite some time.
Yes.
And
but that broke this morning, yes?
Yesterday.
Yes.
Yesterday morning.
Yes.
And to be very honest with you, this is something that we need to highlight more, because if we're constantly highlighting negativity because we're plagued by negativity. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But this is, could you imagine?
Yes.
Trinidad and Tobago, a small island in the Caribbean, you know, at the helm of the UN presidency,
of the UN
leading the UN General Assembly. That is quite an achievement.
Should we have a clapping?
Of course, let's have a clapping sound, because congratulations to
Mr. Francis,
His Excellency, His Excellency Ambassador Dennis Francis.
Yes.
Trinbagonians, I don't know if we will all truly understand what this means, but as an individual who actually studied quite a bit of international relations, I suppose, as part of my political science degree. This is quite an achievement, you know. So, segueing a bit, but the point is, while Janelle is sick, she has to go in a minute. I thought we'd bring up the good news.
We bring up the good news. But
there's also, I think, a lot more positive news with the crime situation in the country. But the problem with that is each story is like a drop in the bucket. So it's not like the total is the trending down. But
I just wanted to say one thing, though. I thought about it in relation to something else. When we always say about Trinidadians not making calls for certain things, not actioning certain things, I heard it somewhere said that a lot of Trinidadians are very busy with just surviving day to day, making ends meet, going to work, feeding their children, dealing with the transportation woes, that they really don't have the space mentally, or the privilege, the word was privilege, to really be involved in all the political comings and goings, shenanigans, or even being up to date on certain issues, and sometimes I keep that in the back of my head. Is it a privileged standpoint where I can make the argument, well, why people are not concerned?
Well, the problem is, It's the same people who technically make up the voting population. So they need to have some idea. The question, of course, is you could never, you know, demand the voting population to have, you know, you all need to know everything perfectly. You know, you can never make, that's just not practical. The question is to what extent now does each individual, no matter how busy, what extent do they have a responsibility to educate themselves on the various issues that matter, at least to them, if not to their neighbors and to anybody else, to them.
Yeah, but at the same time, we also have that responsibility. We share that responsibility. It's an important and crucial role that we play, and I agree with you. Again, I tell you, we related somehow. I have stressed it many a times before. People in Trinidad and Tobago are so consumed with just surviving the day that they tend not to take on the extra unnecessary stress of such controversies. And that is perhaps one of the reasons, because I think there are more, that we're rather complacent. But anyway, Janelle, thank you very much for your time. I'm glad I was here. And by the way, if anybody tries to downplay Trinidad and Tobago's presidency by saying Guyana, St. Lucia, and Antigua and Barbuda were there before us, no, okay, it's still an achievement. Well done, TNT.
Well done.
Janelle, have a good weekend.
Same to you guys and the audience.
See you next week. Fingers crossed.
God willing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we break now here on Talking Point. When we return, we'll continue this morning's discussions on Talking Point.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Force's flagship Mac Beam. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Have we taken into account the experiences of those who have received a devastating diagnosis but persevered, fought, and are survivors today? I welcome Ms. Sally Babulal, a brave woman who was diagnosed with breast cancer. She will share with us her experience of a life-changing journey.
When you get diagnosed, more often than not, you have no experience, none, with this disease.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point, folks. And of course, as I said at the top of the show, we had to switch things around. Janelle has now left us, but the conversation continues. Let's now kick off our daily review. And I did mention that we're getting some good news coming from law enforcement. Not necessarily the whole systemic changes that we might be praying for, but successes in various cases are still successes. One of them is the fact that the TTPS found a chop shop in the woods, which included a significant amount of car parts. I believe, I don't think anybody was directly arrested at the scene, but this is part of a wider effort of the Southern Division's effort to deal with car theft, which potentially seems to be on the rise, and arrests were made at around the same general time for various car theft rings. But Keaton, the fact that there was a chop shop, they used a special type of torch in order to minimize the noise level of chopping the cars up. I think they had something like 7 to 13 cars, I can't remember, that was found, various parts, multiple engines, and it was almost kind of ridiculous that it was just there. And the report said that fortunately, citizens decided to report to the police and kind of get the ball rolling to shut this operation down.
Well done to the TTPS, and thank you very much to whoever made the report to the Trans-Tobago Police Service. It's good that we now have a better understanding of where all these stolen vehicles have gone to. But the thing is, I think maybe the police should stop announcing that they got a tip-off. It also does not necessarily help with regards to the TTPS's ability to carry out investigations. So I understand that public partnership with the Trans-Tobago Police Service is absolutely crucial, and in no way am I downplaying that. I think this is good news overall. However, I will again, look at all sides of it, and whilst congratulating the TTPS, I'll also say, without the tips from the public, is the TTPS able to carry out investigations where we're able to identify where all these stolen vehicles and stolen vehicle parts are going to?
Now, I could actually see some reasons from my perspective where you might be right. Let's not publicize that it was a tip from a member of the public. It might cause the person's identity now. Somebody might look to try and run him down. Who talked, who squealed, who's the rat? The flip side is, though, I think the reason why the police, and it's not just our police service, we've seen press conferences where police around the world have done this. You mention it because it helps encourage other people. Look, here is your fellow citizen, an example of doing the right thing. So while it does potentially expose their identity, I mean, you're not actually saying the name, right? But you're making it known that there is somebody who tipped us off, right? Sometimes when they say there's a tip, that's just cover because they need to say something in public. But in this case, let's just go that there was somebody who tipped them off. It's an example of, like, somebody did it in this case, and nothing bad happened. It was successful. The tip worked, right? It made a difference. It might encourage somebody else now, hey, this crime in my area again are too out of hand. I need to speak up.
I would always encourage citizens to make reports. I understand that the fear behind it, the concern because of corruption within the Trans-Tobago Police Service, or at least alleged corruption. I've had my experiences with the TTPS. But beyond that, the reason why I say that is because the Senior Superintendent Richard Smith of the Southern Division said, they know that we know who they are and we are coming for them, when officers recovered hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. By stating that, by stating that we received a tip-off, what you've also allowed now for is criminal gangs have their hands in almost every single thing. I don't think it's that difficult to make a call to individuals and find out who exactly gave this tip-off. And that is why I'm saying, we should be careful in that aspect. And it's to borrow your term, the irony is, at the same time, I am the one that is also encouraging people to make tip-offs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But, as you've mentioned, communication is an extreme part of the job that we have to be careful with. So it would be better to see, following police investigations, following a spree of robberies and whatnot. And people might say you're lying to the public and whatnot. No, because we also have to keep the safety in check of the citizens. My other question is, though we understand exactly, it was found in a forested area in New Grant, forested area doesn't necessarily mean in the forest. It can mean a piece of land that is covered by trees and bush. So the next question is, exactly who owns this land?
Right.
Is this state land or is it privately owned land?
Well, a piece of the forest could also be privately owned.
Right, so that is my thing. That is also very much a part of this investigation. And furthermore, are there further investigations to try and figure out exactly if there are any auto shops that are purchasing stolen items and then selling them to other car owners? All of that needs to be a part of it in order to shut down this ring, because every day, if you get the opportunity to go on social media, you see that a car, 2 cars, 3 cars are being stolen. So this is what I'm saying. It's good news, but at the same time, I do have my concerns and my questions.
One of the other parts to the stories that was reported, one of the papers included earlier incidents. On Monday, they also busted a 52-year-old garage owner and a 35-year-old painter straightner. It might have been a different operation. They confiscated 13 vehicles. And one of the things that stood out to me is the fact that, well, the term garage owner and painter straightener implies these are people in the automotive service industry. And to what extent now do we have to worry about not only losing people to service our vehicles, but the fact that, they're looking to profit, they're looking to turn to that life of crime, because that could be how you get marked. You take your car into some garage and you're like, hey, this service is great, but you don't realize that that's one of the ways where you might, they know your car, they could inspect it for all intents and purposes, to say, is this suitable to take?
Now, according to Senior Superintendent Smith, they've raided multiple garages within the last few weeks and have arrested 6 individuals thus far. 6 individuals who have been arrested doesn't necessarily mean that they've been charged. Right? They've been arrested in custody, so they have to carry their investigations. But he went on to make another statement. We believe they've been using this location for 3 months. How do we come about with that timeline? Because he's stating that, there are houses leading up to this particular area. We believe they've been using it for 3 months. Is it that residents who reside in some of these houses are telling you, for about 3 months now, we've seen these cars passing up and down?
It could just be that.
Because that statement is also a very key part of this. Is it that it took 3 months for them to gather intelligence with regards to the stolen vehicular parts? Because beyond that, following this particular chop shop raid, I haven't heard anybody being arrested beyond Smith saying, we know who you are and we're coming for you.
The thing is, we could know of activity happening at a location. We don't necessarily know what the activity is. So the neighbors or the people in the area, they might have known that, hey, about 3 months ago, something started happening, but that doesn't mean that they know, but it's an illegal chop shop operation. So,
even if you don't know that it's an illegal chop shop operation, if you have any sort of information 3 months ago, it's not hard to go and say, wait, boy, a man opened up a garage here in the forest.
No, well, they might not even know exactly what he opened up. They just know that there's more traffic, whether it's vehicular, foot traffic, that there just is more human activity.
So, again, I think whilst you are examining all possibilities, and I think that is absolutely fair to do, Sean, you're a smart individual.
Look, when it comes to these sort of things, never, I know that, yes, the most obvious thing is usually truth, but no, you can't always make that assumption. That will cause you to make an error at some point. That is at least that's my philosophy on it. Moving on, before we run out of time, as is the usual there, the TNT Met Office has warned some communities, so not the whole country, might face higher risks of flooding. A lot of it, with regards to the higher risks, seem to be towards the south, with some in central, whereas other parts like central and around Port-of-Spain, they might have little increase to the risk of flooding or no risk at all. Now the question is, with regards to a higher risk of flooding, you know, are we going to respond differently, or are we just going to wait and see? Because I feel as though we complain about flooding after we flood. You know, the government talks about flooding, doesn't really seem to solve the problem. And it's kind of like this passive mentality in this area. We see it again.
One, people continue to litter. People continue to throw their garbage on the streets and not care about it. The police don't do anything about it, but beyond the police, people are not mature and responsible. They continue to litter. If you look at the streets of Trinidad and Tobago, they're lined with garbage. Maybe, I don't know if there's not an efficient, effective garbage collection system, but people just are very nasty. People don't treat their homes like that. People wouldn't just drink something and throw it on the ground. No. People wouldn't do that in their own homes, but they go and do it on the streets. When it floods, they complain it's entirely the government's fault. No, you're a factor and you're a criminal if you're doing that. Two, the government has said they've gone through a desilting program. I'll be very honest with you, I've actually seen where waterways have been widened. I have seen where waterways have been cleared. I've also seen where garbage continues to pile up because people are littering, and unfortunately the agencies are not clearing it up. It's sad that we actually complain about property tax when at the same time we are probably responsible for a lot of these issues. Beyond that, TNT has no drainage, so it obviously is going to flood. I think what the meteorological services are doing are trying to be proactive. They are trying to be proactive.
Right, but are we taking them on?
Good. It depends on who we are. Is the Ministry of Works and Transport taking them on? They're going to say, yes, we are taking them on. I don't know. I can only speak about the work I've seen. Are the citizens taking them on? Many of them not, because many of them will continue to just dump rubbish or dump stove or tire or anything like that. And the third part is, I don't really want to try and undermine the meteorological service, but half the time they get it wrong.
Well, I mean, weather forecasting is not an exact science.
Yeah, but it's not an exact science. But if I were to make comparisons to other weather networks as compared to the meteorological service, I would say I think they're more reliable. Again, not trying to undermine them, but the point is for me, all our Trinidad and Tobago are going to be prone to flooding.
The irony is, yes, if you kind of assume the worst case scenario, because the worst case is a lot of the countries they said that they are concerned about. So not all of the countries that they give like a rating. So what has been reported is those countries that don't have a color code, they're less concerned about flooding than the countries with a color code. A lot of the areas of the nation that they're concerned about, they just have it as slightly higher than normal. And if we don't see it flood, great. My concern is the slightly higher than normal areas turn into a much higher than normal, and then that things get out of control real fast.
Like I said, all of Trinidad and Tobago is going to face flood. We could have a burst of shower over the course of 10 minutes. Gattiga Street floods, Rice and Road floods. Everywhere in TNT is going to flood. There are going to be some areas, obviously, some low-lying areas near waterways that will be at greater risk. But all at TNT, all you better start walking with all your dinghy and life jacket. It is going to flood.
Now, quick, before we break for news, just want to mention the last story, and that is there were different news reports with regards to fraud. One paper was reporting the TPS statements on land fraud and the fact that seems to be on the rise. Another newspaper was reporting not only is there online fraud with regards to e-commerce or a type of card skimming with regards to online e-commerce where you go on a page that is not the actual retailer and your information gets taken and misused, but there's now card shimming, the new links and credit cards with the chip. There is a way for scammers to actually take your chip's information. So I would suggest, we don't have time to expand on it, but fraud seems to be on the rise in the country.
Not seems to be, it is on the rise.
Well, it is on the rise. And this is something, there are various aspects of it. Online with card payment systems and with land fraud. So these are things that folks, you can check the daily newspapers to get more details, but be aware of them and be on the lookout for any potential dangers to you, especially with regards to use of your Links card or credit card in your day-to-day life, because that's just one of the obvious ways you will be vulnerable locally. But folks, we have to break for news on the hour. I don't know if you want to add anything, Keita.
No, not at this point. Let's go for news.
News on the hour. Next, stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
This is your WESN News on the Hour. Thank you for joining us. Here are the headlines. Drama in the House as opposition curses after verbal attack. New chip card skimming technology being used. 98 million fleeced in 2022. Tobago Business Chamber wants answers on leaked audio. Regionally, Jamaica's meteorological services predict 15 to 20-day heat wave. And internationally, social media influencer challenged BBC reporter on rape allegations. With the details, I'm Keaton Shaw. A heated exchange between opposing senators in the Parliament on Wednesday ended with UNC Senator Jayanti Lakshmiyal using obscene language to a PNM senator. Reports state that Lakshmiyal used obscene language in the Parliament tea room following a verbal attack on her by PNM Senator Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal. During the debate on Wednesday, the bill to validate councillors' actions after December 2022, Lakshmiyal slammed the government on issues concerning the recent Privy Council judgment against extension of the local government term. In an immediate response, Sagram Singh Suklal said, quote, Senator Lakshmiyal, throughout her presentation, she kept saying she's astounded and confused, end quote. Sagram Singh Suklal continued by adding, she believed the senator is indeed astounded and she's indeed confused, as she thought this was, and quote, spread pal with Mulihal, end quote. A GML report said Lakshmiyal later went to the Parliament's tea room where some government senators were sitting and obscene language was used by Lakshmiyal in a rebuff when one PNM minister offered her a piece of cake. Customers lost over $98 million due to fraudulent transactions by scammers last year, and millions have also been again fleeced so far for 2023. This according to the police officers of the TTPS during a police media briefing on Thursday. Fraud squad officers warned the public of a new debit credit card scam called shimming. This advanced device allows fraudsters to target the new EMV chip card, which is currently in circulation by financial institutions throughout the country. Acting Corporal Terence Nowbutt during the briefing said fraudsters are going above and beyond to guard the financial information which is contained beyond the magnetic strip of the card. He said customers may question if an EMV card is safe. Nowbutt said that the technology works, but every advancement lies the possibility of fraudsters counteracting the technology. The Tobago Business Chamber is calling on the Tobago House of Assembly to break its silence on the viral voice note purportedly of two top executives discussing hiring persons under the THA to spread propaganda on behalf of the new Tobago People's Party. Chairman of the Tobago Business Chamber, Martin George, called on the THA to clear the air on this matter. He said at this time, no one from the THA leadership has commented on the issue. However, George said much is at stake and concerns have been raised about the integrity and transparency. In regional news, the Meteorologist Service of Jamaica is predicting at least 15 to 20 heatwave days throughout the end of August 2023. A heatwave is defined as a period of abnormally hot weather. The Met Service said eastern parishes are at risk of continuing or developing drought conditions by the end of November 2023. And in international news, social media influencer Andrew Tate has denied fueling a culture of misogyny and defended his reputation in a combative interview with the BBC. The BBC put a range of allegations to him, including specific accusations of rape, human trafficking and exploiting women, for which he is being investigated by Romanian prosecutors. However, Tate dismissed all of them.
We're talking about emotional manipulation into the sex industry for your financial gain.
Absolute garbage.
I'm describing women who are going to court to accuse you of rape and human trafficking. And I'm describing women who have spoken to the BBC at length.
Sophie doesn't exist.
And other media organisations about what they say is emotional manipulation and coercion. And I'm quoting back to you your own words where you describe
They're not my words.
Coercion and emotional manipulation.
They're words you found on the internet. And Sophie doesn't exist.
On your
so let's
website,
move on to the next subject.
This was Tate's first television interview with a major broadcaster since being released into house arrest from the police custody in Romania in April. Tate, who has repeatedly expressed his mistrust of traditional media. That's news to the hour here on WESN. I'm Keaton Sharp. Thank you for watching. We'll have more for you at the top of the hour. Welcome back to Talking Point, and thank you for staying with us this morning, ladies and gentlemen. We were able to welcome Janelle John Bates to the programme. Unfortunately, I missed the first discussion, but it was in regard to the education system and comments made by the Prime Minister. That particular topic was expanded on this morning by Sean and Janelle. Then we were able to have a conversation about the silence of politicians. We segued a bit actually in that particular topic to congratulate Trinidad and Tobago, particularly His Excellency Ambassador Dennis Francis on being elected the President of the United Nations General Assembly yesterday. And then we got into the conversation of the chop shop that was found in New Grant and the ability of the police to actually carry out full investigations, or where they should actually be looking to further their investigation. So I'll give you the opportunity now to join the conversation and share with us your thoughts and opinions, because I believe that we have a phone line working this morning, thankfully. 628-4578, 628-4578. Call and join us on the program. Share with us your thoughts and opinions. Just remember, we do have one phone line working, so I can only ask for you to be short and sweet to give everyone an opportunity. We do have a caller on the line with us from Pity Valley. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sean and Keaton.
Morning. Good morning.
Keaton, this is for you this morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
Are you saying in the police bus with the car parts stuff, are you saying the police should not report their tip-off to the media? Or are you saying only because the police get a tip-off that solve the case? If it's the latter, you should know in all police working, most of the cases is solved by a tip-off. Somebody in the community, the public, give the police a tip-off, and most of any police working solving a case. So I don't know which one you was really referring to. And two, there will always be flooding, always.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of work the ministry doing, I must say, in clearing the drains and widening it, but there will always be flooding, always. No matter what, to have low-lying areas, some people build on riverbanks, whether or not it will be, or we must will always be flooding. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, caller. And thank you very much for your questions. You've raised very good points. But as I said previously, the reasons why I said you need to be very careful in what you're reporting, especially if you keep saying that you're getting a tip-off. And I go back to the comments, actually. I actually don't have the exact comments on me, but Senior Superintendent Mr. Smith, he was saying that how we know who you are, and they know that we know who they are, and we're coming after them. And you have to understand, given the level of, I suppose, fear or concern with citizens having to make reports, though we want them to make reports, the strength, the power, and the influence of criminal gangs by suggesting that I'm saying it's very easy now for a crime boss to just make a call to whoever and find out who made that tip-off. And if you're asking me if I'm saying if it's only because of the tip-off the police were able to solve this crime, Yes, I honestly think so. I am very critical of the TTPS. I give them credit where credit is due. But I, as an individual, I am not entirely confident in the TTPS in carrying out investigations. I'll reference another example. You had a gang leader who was found stabbed to death in a burnt house where they refer to it as Bangladesh, between St. Joseph and Kira. The police said they were known to him. The police said he was a gang leader, a gang member who moved in months prior, a year prior to that event happening. The police believed he was involved in certain shootings and killings in the area, and yet that individual was there. So if you're making these statements, it tells me that you have intelligence. You have intelligence but not enough evidence to prosecute. If you don't have enough evidence, why are you making such statements to the public? I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
No.
I hope you do. If I've not explained myself clearly enough, please call back in and I'll try to clarify myself.
Now, actually to support Keaton, ironically, I did say in this episode, we're seeing, reports of this case being solved, that case, moving forward to fruition and charges being laid, etc., etc. Not necessarily convictions yet. The irony is you might be seeing more arrests just because there's more crime. So there are going to be more arrests because, more and more crimes will slip, not necessarily slip through cracks, but slip through the cracks of those trying to evade the police and have the perpetrators get picked up. So, it is what it is.
I don't think there's a correlation between the number of arrests and the increase in crime.
Well,
because you could have increased crime and you could have the same number of arrests or less.
Right, but the total number of arrests generally, once you have an increase in crime, you would expect, okay, the rate of arrests might remain neutral, but the total number should go up. So there'll be more instances of good news.
I support the TTPS, I support the services, but in supporting them, I'll also be one of the biggest critics constructively.
Constructively. We have a caller on the line from Shogunas. Good morning. Morning, Amplia. I think I heard the caller say something.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning,
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Right. Yes, go ahead, caller.
Right. Again, I hear you blaming the people for the crime. I have explained this to you on many occasions where the Bible, the Talmud and all that show that man is inherently going to commit crime. When God gives them one law, that is why we have government and that is why we have police forces. And I explained to you what the government role is, to enforce all the laws, which they do not do. And that is where we have to concentrate. And talking about spin, I see you all join it. I went through earlier in the week about the problem with property tax. I pointed out to you a sort of misconception, some that you also raised last time, like San Fernando having reassessment in 2008. I don't just say these things. I went and I ran the San Fernando office, talked to the assessor, who confirmed that the assessment was not put on the board, and you come back and say it again. This time you all start checking some of these things. Any questions, gentlemen?
Well,
go ahead.
I just want to say that I did end that segment saying, do we have the right to necessarily blame people, basically, if the system fails them? Because that first segment was talking about aspects of our societal systems not working for parts of the population. So I wasn't blaming them. I wasn't blaming people.
Why don't we address it?
Sorry?
We have the reason why it's not working. The government are not enforcing their laws. They're not updating their laws. And I show you proof of this with the annual administrative report. You have to address that.
Well, my good friend from Shogunas, thank you very much for your point.
Thank you,
it's
gentlemen.
received. Do have a good day and a good weekend ahead. You're not spitting in the wind. I'm sorry if you feel as though you're repeating yourself, but sometimes in order to get the message across, one has to drive it in, if you understand what I'm saying. So, nevertheless, your point is very much received. It has not been ignored, but we'll look at all possibilities. Moving forward now with the program, we have a caller on the line with us from Cascade. Good morning, caller.
Oh, good morning to you, Keaton, and good morning to you, Sean.
Good morning.
The matter with respect to Tobago is a most serious matter, and it requires interventions, I believe, from the police, because this is clearly a serious fraud on the population. And but you know, in more ways than one, this matter reminds me so much about Emailgate and Dr. Rowley. And I wonder whether they are not, as it were, coming out of the same hat. Now, in addition to that, sometimes when I listen to the program and I read the news and I follow what is trending in terms of criminal activity in the country, it could seem to be overwhelming all of us as citizens of this country. And so the question is there more crime in Trinidad and Tobago today than there has ever been? And if the answer is yes, the next question must be, to what extent have we been able to get on top of the crime? And the final question is, do we have the capacity to get on top of the crime? And if we do not have the capacity to get on crime, we, like any, when you're studying, if your parents see you not doing well, they get extra lessons and they get a tutor to assist you to get on top of the subject. Trinidad and Tobago needs a tutor to help it get on top of its crime. There is the Shipwrighter Agreement that Dr. Rowley and this government has refused to sign and to participate in with the United States. We all talk about a lot of things about sovereignty and what have you. And I guess they want to remain on good terms with the Chinese and the Russians and what have you. But the Shipwrighter Agreement is working throughout the region, Jamaica and in Barbados. And just to name two, we have got to get on board and do what is necessary to bring law and order to this country. Law and order. When there's law and order in this country, we will begin to realize how productive and how Trinidad could truly diversify, because we won't be spending time and money on crime, which, as we have already developed, is impacting every line item in our budget, be it education, be it health, and the list goes on and on. I rest my case again this morning.
Do you have a good day, caller? Thank you very much for your contribution. 628-4578. 628-4578. That's the number to call in and make your contribution to Talking Point this morning. If it's just possible, to our hard-working technical team, can we just kindly raise the volume on the callers, if that's possible, please? It's a bit low.
Now, with regards to the first caller and the comments on flooding, I do wonder, as you're speaking, I got the thought, is it that our infrastructure, that is to say roads, utilities and stuff, is kind of dictating, well, build here. Like, it's easier to build here, so build here. And maybe if we had that sorted out, we would not have people building in flood-prone areas as much. Just a thought, our road systems and our infrastructure, public utilities, etc. But we have a caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Gentlemen.
Good morning.
Hello.
Yes, morning. You're on the air.
Morning. Yeah, I listened to you talk about the education sector this morning. One of the issues I have been speaking about this for so long. The issue is that primary school education system, for the most part, is where the problem starts. Where in 7 years of a child going to primary school, that child, when that child sits the C exam, that child cannot make a 30% mark. And that is where the core is. I remember last year when the Secondary School Principals Association president spoke on this, and she said that the problem was that the children were coming from the primary schools with the problem. They were coming, they could not read. A lot of them could not read, and they could not understand basic math. And that is where the problem is. And I keep saying this. If you look at the system, primarily the problem is not within the denominational schools. The problem is not with the denominational schools. There's a problem within the government school system, government-run schools. And if it is that they have not recognized this, go and speak to the Master and those other people on the Catholic board and the TML and get an understanding of why it is you're all doing better than the other schools, and work on a solution to this problem. That is.
Yeah.
Let me comment quickly on something else. That situation with that voice recording in Tobago. That is just a part of this new THA's. I mean, I was one that chastised Sean and to give them a chance. Sean, I must apologize to you this morning. I have listened to Mr. Mr. James, the Secretary for Infrastructure, up to yesterday. And Mr. James is a horse gone wild. And he is just a reflection of the rest of this present THA administration. With that issue with that road and the
yes.
and the EMA. And Mr. James sought to defend that by saying, well, the last administration built stuff and they didn't get EMA didn't tell them anything, so we're just doing the same thing. That is the new governance that they're trying to run in Tobago, you know. That is going to fail and fail miserably.
It is failing.
The old new governance, or the new old governance.
This present administration has not done anything to distinguish themselves from previous administrations. Furthermore, they're happy and they're satisfied. They don't have to call an election, because if they serve their full term, which I suspect they will, they're going to get their pensions, their secretary pensions and their chief secretary pensions. So I don't care. Let me wait all these 4 years. I could do absolute nonsense. I don't have to make it again. I don't have to be a part of it again. I will just get my pension when that time comes, right? And they're going to say, well, so this is why they're happy. I do not think, and I'm sorry to say this, we had Dr. Faith B. Israel months, every single Friday leading up to that election. She made the time available. I understand that she's Deputy Chief Secretary and as well as Secretary for Health and Wellness and Family Education. I understand that. Very busy job. Dr. Faith B. Israel doesn't even respond to your messages anymore. We've tried many a times to get her on the program. We've tried multiple times. And if you're going to defend her this morning...
No. I said I intend to, throw that line,
So, as far as I'm concerned...
Again,
but the thing is, she doesn't respond to your messages, but she has time to update her WhatsApp status all the time of her singing in her car. Good, you're allowed to sing in your car and whatnot. Respond to the media when the media is reaching out to you. It is an extremely crucial part of your job. Have your fun too, you're a human being as well. But God, Dr. Faith B. Israel has certainly changed. I don't know if she's changed or if this is how they were all the time before, and they just put on masks in order to run the campaign. But quite honestly, I'm extremely disappointed. And I would even go as far as to say, I really wonder if they care about Tobago or the people of Tobago, if they just care about themselves. Because it's not different. It's not different at all.
No, caller from San Fernando, I don't think you were wrong to say give them a chance. The point is, now that we have given them a chance, do we reassess? Is now the time that the chances are over? I'm not even necessarily sure about that, to be fair to you and those that had that opinion. We have a caller in the line from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Oh, got to cut off.
No, you're on the air, caller. Well, that's unfortunate.
Caller, ladies and gentlemen, we do apologize. It's technical difficulties on all ends. I don't think it's just WSN anymore that is suffering from TSTT and by extension Bmobile's incompetence, because I'm experiencing severe effects outside of WSN as well.
That's not going to hold us down, folks. This is WSN Content Capital. We have the caller back. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning, Sean.
Morning, you're on there.
anyone ever been to one of them chop shop? To go like to buy parts or anything?
Yes. I've been to the Bamboo.
That business, that car racket business with them parts going on for years, you know. Years.
So
I feel because why they're solving this because they change all the head of the business because changing all the system. So we get a little results now. But that's good on I went to buy certain parts up in them places in Granted. And if you walk them to the back and you see the kind of things that have in the back here, you'll be amazed in them shop. So
thank you very much, Kolo.
that's been on for years. So take care.
Yeah.
No, very good program.
Thank you.
Cool. I mean, yeah, I don't think I've been to a chop shop, an illegal chop shop. I don't think I've been to that.
It is your duty and responsibility to report these things that you see. I just say. But thank you very much. As per what I was saying previously with regard to TSTT, don't interrupt me when I'm complaining about TSTT because they need to know that they are causing us this, by the way, for any business, including WSN, we have to pay our bills for our service.
And we're not the only ones who've hit this up, folks.
Right?
We are not the only ones.
We have to pay our bills. If we stop paying our bills, and by the way, Amplia is no different. Amplia is no different at all. The next thing is they're going to actually take WSN of Bmobile and Amplia. Listen, the point is, it is a terrible service. Even trying to contact them to try and resolve the issue has been a pain. But if we stop paying our bill, they're going to come after us, aren't they?
We've actually had somebody come to the studio just to complain about TSTT. No lie, not another telecommunication carrier. They didn't even necessarily know that we had issues with TSTT. They came just because they had issues and they wanted to speak to us about it. That was a while ago. We found it very ironic because we weren't asking for anyone to come in. And what Keaton just said, I have issues with the service, but I still have to pay for the service that I'm not getting most of the time,
so the
if
thing
at
is,
all.
If traffic in Tobago affects productivity and output,
yes, exactly.
What is not having my communications lines also doing for my business?
Hey, I got it, Keaton. Maybe all the politicians in the country use TSTT, and that's why they're not communicating, because, the phone line's breaking up. But back to what you said about the THA, is this who they are, or did they change? And I think it's a combination of both. I think the lack of experience for the bulk of their membership meant that it was going to change them. We didn't know what they were going to be like because this is their first foray. And the Secretary of Infrastructure seems as though the moment is too big for him. I've used that phrase before. He is not prepared with regards to how to communicate. Your whole campaign is you're going to fix it, right? You're supposed to be better than the other guy. The last thing you're supposed to say is, well, they did it, so we could do it. In what way is that acceptable? So that's, public relations faux pas 101 there. That's not a justification. You can't blame the previous administration and say, but we're going to use their methods. So, as you pointed out, just as bad. But with regards to the leadership, I don't know if, I honestly think even because the leadership of that group was in the THA for some period before this current time where they're in the majority.
So the question I will ask is, to some extent, did Watson Duke have a point?
Folks, that is a question that I think we'll have to examine the next week, because that's a good question now, buddy. Oh my goodness, is that a good question?
Anyway,
wow.
That's it for Talking Point, Sean. I hope you have a good weekend ahead.
Buddy, you just hit me a bomb there. I can't even believe that I'm considering that question seriously. 2 months ago, it would have been a no-brainer. No. But now, have to consider it. Oh my goodness.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Sean Michael Small. I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Point. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day and a great weekend ahead. And hopefully, should things go well enough, Sean's brain is still blown, actually. He's still... We'll see you again on Monday morning.
You got a point. Oh my goodness.
WESN.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you do in Amplia.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Figure such as Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida.
David, thank you very much for that. David Smith reporting there from Washington. Now, authorities in Senegal are bracing for more violence. This after deadly riots rocked the capital on Thursday, killing at least 9 people. Tensions are high after a court acquitted opposition candidate Ousmane Sonko of rape, but found him guilty of corrupting youth. The charge carries 2 years behind bars. The 48-year-old has yet to be arrested, and his supporters say this case is politically motivated. Brian Quinn reports.
2 years in jail for leading opposition figure Ousmane Sonko, and the skies above Dakar are thick with smoke. Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar was one arena of clashes, where protesters threw stones as riot police fired tear gas and buses belonging to the university faculties burned. Also in the capital, protesters blocked the motorway leading to the airport. Elsewhere in the country, the Interior Ministry reported unrest in Casamance, Mbour, Kaolack and Saint-Louis, unrest that proved deadly for some. The presidential party say their headquarters were ransacked. Sentenced on charges of corrupting youth, The Senegalese opposition leader was acquitted of raping and making death threats to a 20-year-old massage parlour worker in 2021. His supporters and lawyers call the charges politically motivated.
The critical point of today's ruling is that Ousmane Sonko did not rape Adji Sarr and did not threaten to kill her. If that is true, then there must be a conspiracy behind these charges.
Lawyers for the alleged victim, on the other hand, hailed the decision.
Mr. Sonko's guilt was established and recognized by criminal court judges. Our satisfaction is mixed. It's not complete, but it is a significant victory.
Sonko did not attend Thursday's hearing, but the Ministry of Justice said he could now be arrested at any time. Under Senegalese law, the crime of corrupting youth means using a position of power to have sex with people under the age of 21. Jail time could stand in the way of Sonko running in next year's presidential elections. And incumbent Macky Sall has been accused of weaponising the judiciary to sideline opponents. He has remained vague about his intentions to run again, but the opposition say a third term would be unconstitutional.
Foreign ministers from BRICS nations are meeting in Cape Town. The gathering of the group made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa comes against the backdrop of the ongoing war in Ukraine. The bloc is seeking a greater voice on the international stage as an alternative to the existing world order. Catherine Viet reports.
Ambitious goals for BRICS as the five-nation bloc urged a rebalancing of the global order. Once considered a loose association of emerging economies, the group made up of South Africa, Brazil, India, China and Russia has grown in scope since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. The bloc discussed plans for its new development bank while taking a swipe at Western sanctions on Russia.
Ensure that we do not become victim to sanctions that have secondary effects on countries that have no involvement in issues that have led to those unilateral sanctions.
But the two-day meeting in Cape Town has been overshadowed by the fallout from the war in Ukraine.
Stop Putin! Stop the war!
A small group of demonstrators gathered by the meeting site to protest against the war. South Africa has strong ties with Russia dating back decades, but Pretoria says it follows a strict policy of neutrality in regards to the war. Critics, though, say the government is sympathetic to the Kremlin. Washington has also expressed concerns about South Africa's joint military exercises with Russia and China on the anniversary of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. The naval drills were seen as a tacit endorsement of the invasion, an accusation Pretoria denied. Just last month, the U.S. ambassador to South Africa accused the government of supplying weapons to Russia by loading a Russian cargo ship, the Lady R, docked at Simonstown Naval Base with munitions for its trip home. South Africa has angrily denied the allegations but ordered an investigation into them. As the group prepares to meet again later this summer, South Africa is facing a final headache: the possible arrest of Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's wanted by the ICC on charges of deporting Ukrainian children. As an ICC member, Pretoria would be expected to immediately arrest the Russian president if he sets foot in the country.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has ordered an audit of all bomb shelters in the capital. It comes after 3 people were killed on Thursday after they couldn't enter an underground facility they had tried to reach. Moscow continued to hit the Ukrainian capital once again today. This is the 6th day in a row that Kyiv's been targeted. Antonia Kerrigan reports.
Thursday marked another night of strikes over Kyiv. After residents hid out in the city's underground network, Kyiv's military authorities boasted the effectiveness of Ukraine's air defense system.
Terror on Kyiv by air continues. After the ballistic missiles of the day before, this was a combined attack. Using both drones and cruise missiles, more than 30 air targets were detected and destroyed in the airspace over and around Kyiv by air defense systems.
Meanwhile, across the Russian border, Ukrainian strikes have intensified on the Belgorod region, continuing in the border town of Shebekino on Thursday night, wounding more than 10. Authorities say they will evacuate 2,500 residents.
6 temporary accommodation centers have been set up in Belgorod alone. The biggest one is here at the sports arena. As of today, it can shelter 1,250 people.
Russian authorities also claim to have repelled 70 Ukrainian troops, 5 tanks and other military vehicles attempting to cross the border into the Belgorod region in the small hours of Thursday morning. Kyiv insists any such incursion was not the work of Ukrainian forces, but Russian anti-government paramilitary groups. Further north, Russia's air defences shot down several drones in the city of Kursk on Thursday night, and authorities report shelling in 2 villages in the Bryansk region. Growing more frequent, attacks on Russian soil have now hit 3 of the 4 regions on Ukraine's northern border with Russia. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has denounced the lack of condemnation from the West.
Now, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says Washington is seeking just and lasting peace for Ukraine. The comments were made earlier today in Finland. Blinken called Russia's war in Ukraine a strategic failure as he visited NATO's newest member. Take a listen.
Pleasure. Here. We made every effort to get Moscow to de-escalate its manufactured crisis and resolve its issues through diplomacy. President Biden told President Putin that we were prepared to discuss our mutual security concerns, a message that I reaffirmed repeatedly, including in person with Foreign Minister Lavrov. We offered written proposals to reduce tensions. Together with our allies and partners, we used every forum to try to prevent war.
Anthony Blinken speaking there. Now, here in France, a parliamentary commission has been looking into links between the far-right National Rally Party and Russia. Over 6 months, the commission interviewed people while trying to draw a distinction between influence